Thanks, everyone. I can't believe we're so high-tech in the park that my old tech wasn't good enough for the high-tech audience, so I hope you can see it. My name is Maureen McCue. I'm trained as a physician and global health professor. So I think it's only reasonable that Cheryl and Guy, who know everything about climate, and the rest of you who know everything about conflict, I'm just going to give a quick overview from the health perspectives of the costs and interactions of issues that are driving both climate and conflict, because they're tightly interwoven. And so I'm not going to go into a lot of specifics about either, but leave that to the following speakers and to you as the audience. Robert, what we didn't talk about was, are we doing Q&A at the end of everything?
Yes, if you would like to, absolutely. We have plenty of time.
Okay.
So there's no rush.
Okay, this is really wonderful, right here in the park. Okay, so without further ado, actually I put this first picture up here because what I really wanted to make sure everybody realized is that with today's conflicts, most of the casualties are our children. Whether we're talking about children in this country or children in the countries that are being affected, because the conflicts that we're engaged in are in countries with extremely young populations, and that means Afghanistan, Iraq, Sudan, Yemen, Syria, all of the places that we're involved in protecting our people. We're protecting them from children, and we're at the same time affecting our children as well. And the talk wasn't to be about children, so I thought at least I'd put them up in the first slide. I hope everybody can sort of see the screen. So in general, as I mentioned, I think it's important for us to remember that our environment, our economy, our conflicts and climate are all interactively interconnected. And we can hardly address one of these issues without really thinking about the others and our role, because we are all participants in our economy. And how our economic pursuits are driving militarism, and militarism driving destruction of our built environment, and we go round and round. And what I also wanted to talk about are the things that we don't hear too often in a lot of these talks, has to do with construction and our economy and deforestation and their interrelations, so that we also know we're taking and having a role in all of this. So my basic question to the military people in the room is, does military in any way really create security the way we understand it? We all think we need, quote unquote, a strong military to ensure our security. But really, do we ever ask what percentage of the greenhouse gases that we're concerned about that are contributing to climate change?
The answer
What
to
about
your question is no.
Thank you. What is the military's contribution in terms of the weapons production systems that are contributing to climate change? What about all the military exercises that go on way beyond anything we can see? The war games that happen all around the world, the weapons testing that goes on all around the world. What about military aviation, troop transfer, military operations, all the waste that they entail? What about updating and modernizing of weapons? Every time we develop these high-tech weapons, then we turn around 4 or 5 years later and spend buku bucks to update and modernize, and the old ones get shifted out. What about maintaining these bases all around the world? The U.S. is a huge octopus with at least 700, almost 800 bases around the world, controlling the world, literally. And some of those are unfriendly nations, so we have to put in extra security, build extra material in those unfriendly nations. And then, of course, always during conflict, what about the cost to climate change of destroying environments? What about the cost of reconstruction? Is there a relationship between environmental security and climate security and national security? I really think we need to start asking, how do we define security? Mary Beth and I did that last summer and the summer before. And most people haven't really given much thought beyond they know they need to eat and drink and have housing. So the beginning of the story with military and climate starts long before we actually have conflict. And we don't forget about, we don't remember that. The U.S., the DOD, is the largest user of petroleum. We need petroleum because we need the military, because we need petroleum. It's a really ugly cycle that we've got ourselves invested in.
That's a good point.
And we need to use a lot of energy to move those soldiers to all those bases around the world. And we have the most petroleum-dependent military, both the physical men as well as the physical material. And when we're doing all of these things, our practices, our movement, we're also leaching all kinds of carcinogenic pollutants into the sea and into the soil. And we are decimating all kinds of environmental systems, the environmental systems on which our lives and all life depends. So, you know, we don't think about these materials. What kind of weight on the planet to make these big pieces of heavy equipment? What kind of weight in terms of petroleum to move these pieces from place to place? What kind of weight to then toss them in a few years and build more? So obviously when we're actually at war, we're destroying families, communities, we're limiting human rights, social justice, all that which we talk about in a very righteous way about how we're so supportive of human rights. We destroy all of the infrastructure that supports health. As a physician who has traveled and worked in many parts of the world in conflict, we know the first thing to be targeted and eliminated is the healthcare infrastructure. We target, we bomb, whether seriously, intentionally, or seriously, unintentionally. We bomb the hospitals, we bomb the clinics, we get rid of that which supports life. That's the way you quote-unquote win. So we also, in that way, push all the protection away from health and the promotion of health. We destroy the environment that supports health. We overuse all those non-renewable resources, and this becomes self-perpetuating. We think around the world violence is the only way to resolve conflicts. We sow the seeds of the next conflict every time we do this kind of destruction, and we worsen the climate. So I think I've said all of this: the profligate use and waste of petroleum, the destruction of ecosystems, destruction of life-sustaining infrastructure, and then of course the massive flows of people. And this is what we're arguing about in this country. Are we going to allow more refugees, even as we create more refugees? So just a picture of a little bit of toxic air pollution and militarism and petroleum. Remember those fires in Kuwait? They weren't just in Kuwait. They're every time we bomb any kind of petroleum facility. So you get all kinds of toxic air pollution, you get all kinds of water pollution. And if you remember, Kuwait was a desert in order to fight those fires using very scarce water resources. And then the thing we almost never talk about are the barrels of toxic waste that have to be stored somewhere on this planet after all of this is said and done. So climate change and violent conflict, they're tightly interconnected, with both of them creating the situation for the other. And when you have conflict, you're also decreasing the ability to adapt to climate change, which, as we know, is in process. It is not going to end just because we end conflict, but rather we must limit our impact, and part of that is to eliminate our support for violent conflict. So buy your shirt and go out and work to stop war. And just a few examples of how the changing climate is impacting the people that we've already impacted with climate. Iraq is experiencing extreme heat, as you know. And because all the water and sewage facilities have been destroyed, there's a high rate of gastrointestinal illness. We know about cholera rampant in parts of Syria and Yemen right now. Food supply is affected. Power generation, everything is unpredictable, i.e. sets up the cycle of the next conflict. And then we have to talk about conflict being development in reverse. I don't know if you guys can see this, but this is a heavily bombed southern suburbs in Beirut from the time of the war there in 2006. It's just a huge complex of concrete being destroyed after that bombing. And we don't talk about cement and concrete, but that is part of the picture. Cement is the glue for progress, quote unquote, in development, and we need it. But once it's demolished in these conflict situations, it has no real viable recycling potential. And then we just keep doing it. And cement itself is a highly climate change, CO2 reducing process. And there are some modern processes that are decreasing and making it a little bit more greener, but the need for rebuilding, the need for concrete continues much ahead of development of greener technology. It takes very high heat, a lot of energy to make the cement that goes into making concrete. And we tend to forget that when we think of bombing, but that's a very important part of the climate picture. And then, of course, when we do all this bombing, destruction, construction, deconstruction, we're also deforesting at the same time. It's both the process in modern development and our agriculture, but it's also being affected in conflict situations. And as we know, when we destroy the forest, we destroy the lungs, we destroy the animals, we destroy the life that supports our life. And just a little bit of history. When we have conflict and we have forests, people run into forests, and they all need wood for cooking. They all need to build shelters. So in addition to concrete being destroyed, forests are destroyed as a part of this interlocking process. I said all that. Deforestation, impacts the exchange of water vapor also, and also is contributing to our water scarcity, water pollution problem. Just a little bit of history for those of you who weren't in the Vietnam War. Some of you, I'm sure, were. We sprayed all these herbicides and Agent Orange all over this beautiful green country and made a lot of it unsupporting life. In addition to that, we made all these bomb craters, which are now filled with water and mosquitoes. And we all know mosquitoes are becoming increasingly a problem in terms of infectious disease transmission. We are worried in general about health and disease transmission, and so to continue to do the processes that promote it is really insanity. But extreme weather leads to communicable disease outbreaks. We don't talk about the third army in any conflict is infectious disease. So our military involved in Vietnam, our military involved now in Syria, our military involved in Iraq and Afghanistan faced infectious diseases that they wouldn't have had to deal with if they just stayed here at home. And we now keep moving these infectious diseases because we keep moving the vectors that move these diseases. So these are important also background considerations. So the other problem, and hopefully this is part of what Cheryl's going to talk about too, is that we will allocate billions, trillions of dollars for the military, but we don't seem to be able to alleviate poverty or promote economic development. This is very much in play right now as we're trying to cut back all of our human supports to go to increasing our military. And just for those of you who know, it will cost a lot to clean up our water. It will cost a lot to feed the planet. But when you compare it to the military, it's nothing. So this picture is, in 2015, a button that symbolizes our military expenditure on the planet. The other is what it would cost to support the UN's Sustainable Development Goals. as a piece of that military expenditure. It's nothing, it's peanuts. But our priorities and our budget are way out of sync. We could pretty much feed the world. We could pretty much clean up the world's water. We could clean up our problems with healthcare, but we can't so long as we continue to emphasize military spending. And last but not least, of course, even on the way down here, I'm listening to people talk about, so what do we do about North Korea? What does our president want to do about North Korea? Who's the rogue nation? Who has thousands of nuclear weapons? Who has an unstable leader who is willing to use those weapons? I ask you, we are in a predicament, and we have got to make more noise, and we have got to do more to make it clear to people that these are not isolated issues, these are not isolated concerns, but we are talking about on the side, if we continue to push climate, we continue to push conflict as our way to resolve issues between people, if we even begin to think we can use nuclear weapons to solve a damn thing.
Right on.
Just for those of you who didn't know, I don't have any literature on it because it just happened last week. The UN did pass a treaty banning nuclear weapons.
Yay!
But the US didn't sign on, so we got to make noise. We've got to stop those weapons. Thank you.
Thank you.
Cheryl.